What if everything you know about human origins is wrong? Not just a little wrong, but completely wrong. Look at the evidence right in front of us. Stones that no one can explain, maps that predate recorded history, batteries from 2,000 years ago, a temple older than the pyramids, all of it whispering a secret. A secret archaeologists don't want you to know. I have seen this evidence. I have stood before stones that cannot be explained. I have seen a fit so perfect, it haunts you today. I will tell you the real story. The story of a lost civilization, a civilization that existed before us. A civilization erased from history. Get ready, because once you know this truth, you will never forget it. Start in Peru, above the city of Cusco. On a high mountain ridge sits the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. It challenges everything we think we know. The walls are made of massive stone blocks. Some blocks weigh up to 200 tons. They fit together so perfectly, it is unbelievable. So perfect that a razor blade cannot slide between them. Not in one place, but everywhere. The joints are impossibly tight, along every inch. The mainstream story says the Inca built this fortress. They built it without writing, without the wheel. They dragged 200-ton blocks up the mountain. With human strength, there is no record of how it was done. No instruction tablet, no blueprint. It is simply there, an engineering miracle. Without explanation, this is where the mainstream story begins to fracture. Every stone at Sacsayhuaman is unique. They are not standard blocks cut to a template. Each one is carved to match its neighbor's contours exactly. 12 angles, 16 angles. Concave faces meeting convex faces. Modern engineers have tried to replicate this fit. They have failed. The seams always break. This brings us to a suppressed theory. In the 1950s, a Peruvian priest named Carlos de Lourdes spoke of a secret. His father knew of a plant-based liquid that could soften stone. It made stone pliable. Then it would harden again. He said he replicated the process. His work was dismissed, the samples lost. But looking at the stones, you understand why he believed. They look like they were poured, pressed into place. While soft, they look like they cooled and set against each other, not carved to fit, but as if they froze together. Mainstream archaeologists say this is just an optical illusion. But the Inca left no records claiming credit. Their oral histories say the fortress was already old, built by an earlier people. Modern engineers cannot reproduce the fit. The builders left no instructions. The priest who found the answer died, his samples gone. We are left with the stones, and one question: how? But Peru is not the only place with mysteries. In the 1930s, French anthropologist Marcel Griaule traveled to Mali. He studied the Dogon tribe at the foot of the Bandiagara cliffs. He documented their religious cosmology, their traditions, their rituals. Elders drew in the sand, never having seen a telescope. What he recorded should not exist. The Dogon knew about Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. They knew it was not alone, that a second star orbited it. They called it Potolo, a small and heavy star. They knew its orbital period was 50 years. They drew its long elliptical orbit in the sand for him. Modern astronomy confirmed Sirius B in 1862, but they did not photograph it. Until 1970, the Dogon knew about it hundreds of years before. They explained the knowledge was given to them by the Nomo. The Nomo were amphibious beings who descended from the sky. They came from the Sirius system itself to teach the ancestors. To the Dogon, this is history, not mythology. Mainstream researchers have rebuttals. Griaule may have inadvertently fed them answers. Missionaries told biblical stories that may have influenced them. These rebuttals are reasonable, but incomplete. The sand drawings, the elliptical paths, the density and period, all set in Griaule's field notes, recorded before any photograph of Sirius B existed. They could not have known about white dwarf stars. Who taught them? Either they were taught by someone who knew, or there is a source of ancient knowledge. And the Dogon are not the only ones who knew too much. In 1513, Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis drew a map on gazelle skin with ink. far beyond any cartographer of his time. He claimed the map was compiled from older sources, some from the time of Alexander the Great. For centuries, this was a curiosity, an impressive piece of Ottoman cartography, nothing more. But when they looked closely at the southern edge, everything changed. The map shows a long coastline south of South America, a coastline that could not have been known in 1513. Strange enough, what is worse, the coastline does not show Antarctica. As it is today, it does not show the ice nearly 2 miles thick. It shows the bedrock beneath the glaciers. In 1960, the US Air Force examined the map. They compared it to seismic data of Antarctica. They confirmed the match. Their conclusion is in official correspondence. The map shows a coastline buried under ice, terrain that was unknown. In 1513, someone mapped Antarctica before the ice covered it, pushing the source maps back thousands of years. Some estimates push it much further. The timeline collapses. Piri Reis was not a mystic. He was a working admiral. He had access to the Imperial Library. In Constantinople, he used 20 source maps. Naming some of them, most of those sources are now lost, but his map survives like a fingerprint from a lost age. Someone in deep prehistory stood on that shore and mapped it, then the chain broke. The official position says the resemblance is coincidence, but the Air Force letter and the bedrock say otherwise. Between those two answers is something missing from our history. In 1936, workers near Baghdad unearthed clay jars dated to roughly 2,000 years ago, barely 5 inches tall. Archaeologists thought they were storage jars for grain or seeds, but they were not empty, like ordinary storage vessels. Inside each jar was a copper cylinder held in place by bitumen. The copper had corroded to that distinctive green-blue pattern. An iron rod sat inside, also corroded, showing it had been exposed to an acidic electrolyte. This is not a storage vessel, this is a battery. Researchers discovered something deeply uncomfortable. Filled the jar with vinegar or grape juice, both available in the ancient Near East. It produces a measurable, repeatable, functional current. One jar is a curiosity. A cluster wired in series becomes a power source. They found no scrolls, no fragments, no chemical trace of papyrus or parchment. Mainstream archaeologists say it was for storing scrolls, but the evidence suggests otherwise. What were they doing with it? We do not know. There are multiple examples. They did not write down what they did. Or if they did, the records did not survive. Alessandro Volta built his battery in 1800. Every textbook treats this as the beginning of harnessing current. But people were generating current in clay jars 2,000 years ago. Knowledge does not only accumulate, it evaporates, it is forgotten. Buried under empires, rediscovered by accident. If they had batteries, what else did they have? The question is no longer what they knew, but what else they knew. Yonaguni, Japan. Off the western coast of the island, under 80 feet of water. There is a structure, sharp right angles, wide terraces, straight walls. From the surface, there is nothing to see. The water is deep. The current is strong. Divers went down, found steps carved into the stone, wide enough to walk on, square enough to measure. The scale is wrong. For anything natural, clearly artificial. Yonaguni sits on a shelf that was above water. During the last ice age, sea level was roughly 100 feet lower than today, placing the construction window more than 10,000 years ago. But Japan's civilization at that time were hunter-gatherers, no quarries, no cut stone, no engineering tradition, nothing in the archaeological record explains it. It challenges everything we think about civilization. Then the sea rose. Whatever it was submerged. Lost beneath the waves, geologists say. It is a geological phenomenon. Sandstone fracturing along bedding plains can create right angles. Erosion created the terraces. They call it a trick of the brain, projecting meaning onto a lifeless rock. But the divers keep going down. The right angles hold their shape. You can swim through it, touch the steps, but you cannot explain it. To Bolivia, Puma Punku, on a windswept plateau. over 12,000 feet high. Near Lake Titicaca, it leaves engineers baffled. Andesite blocks scattered across the plateau, cut with industrial precision. They are designed to fit together with grooves, holes, and angles to lock perfectly. The drill holes are uniform, consistent in diameter and depth. The walls of each hole are smooth, aligned in straight lines across the stone. Geometric arrangement, weight. Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons, not quarried on site, transported from quarries over 10 miles away. Across rugged mountain terrain, no wheels, no draft animals. Imagine dragging a 100-ton block across 10 miles of mountains. Tools. Andesite is extremely hard, innate on the mass scale. To cut it cleanly, to drill it, to polish it, you need harder tools. Diamond will do it, but the Tiwanaku had none of these. They were a Bronze Age culture. Working with copper and stone hammers, the metallurgy does not work. The builders did not possess harder tools, yet the work demands those tools. But the structure stands there, in the cold mountain light. Either the technology was erased from history, or something happened on that plateau, quietly written out. Once you accept this site can be explained away, with a shrug you ask, what else? What happens when a man claims he found a pyramid, one that everyone else says cannot exist? Bosnia 2005. Businessman Samir Osmanagic caused a stir. He announced he found the Pyramid of the Sun, 720 feet tall, the oldest and largest on Earth. The hill called Vizichika looks natural, with unusual geometric shape. Osmanagic believed there were tunnels and stone blocks inside the tunnels. They found ceramic blocks, large flat slabs. The scientific community responded. The European Association of Archaeologists issued a statement they called the Bosnian Pyramids a cruel hoax. They said the hill is just a hill for mainstream archaeology. The case was closed, but nothing stopped. Excavations continued, tunnels grew longer. Tourists arrived, buses arrived, tickets sold, independent researchers flew in. To survey, they measured and found a 28 kHz signal, claiming it was energy from inside the pyramid. There are two stories. One calls it a hoax. The other calls it truth. Both claim to be right. Only one is allowed to publish. In academic journals, the Bosnian pyramids may be a businessman's fantasy dressed in the language of science, or they may be something the credentialed world cannot see, because admitting it would unmake the timeline. You cannot know from where you sit. You only notice. The question is no longer academic. It has tunnels now. It has visitors. It has a signal, raising a larger possibility. What else is being overlooked? The Sahara. Around 360 BC, Plato wrote of an island called Atlantis, rich, powerful, sunk in a single day and night. Scholars filed it as myth, allegory, a literary device. Satellites began photographing the Sahara. In Mauritania, there is a strange structure, the Eye of the Sahara, also called the Richet structure. From orbit, it looks like a bullseye. Roughly 30 miles wide, 3 nested circles. Geometry so precise, it stops you, geologists insist. It is an eroded dome, a geological accident. Layers pushed up, then worn down by wind and time. That is the official answer. The one you are allowed to publish, but look deeper. And the explanation begins to fracture. These rings have fluvial sediments. Humans once lived there. The land Plato described, fertile, ringed by water, matches the Richet structure in diameter and rings the destruction by water. Plato wrote of floods and tsunamis. The Sahara was once green, a vast savanna with rivers and lakes. Then around 10,000 years ago, the climate shifted, it dried up, lakes vanished, rivers died. The people had to leave or be buried. Plato wrote that Egyptian priests told the story to Solon. They said the Greeks were young. They had forgotten the older world, that there had been civilizations before them. Taken by the sand, this is the part academia cannot say out loud, not because the evidence is absent, but because admitting it. Oral tradition survived 9,000 years of migration with its geography intact. A dismissed fable might be a memory. The ring city in the desert, you can fly over it right now. Pull up satellite imagery tonight. See it yourself. The mainstream answer is erosion coincidence. Geology happens to align with Plato's account. Maybe Plato guessed wrong. Maybe the rings are an accident, or maybe the story was always true. We were looking on the wrong continent. Maybe the desert remembers what the textbooks do not. Back to Mesopotamia. Clay tablets unearthed in Iraq, thousands of years old, recording stories of gods. Among them is a name, the Anunnaki. Gods who descended from the sky. The tablets describe them as rulers, coming from the heavens, shaping humanity, walking the first cities. Sumerologists call it mythology, some call it memory. In the 1970s, writer Zecharia Sitchin, he claimed the Sumerians were not inventing gods, but reporting visitors. The Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru to find gold. Gold to repair their atmosphere, creating humans as laborers. Modern scholars universally reject Sitchin's translations, linguistically baseless. The academic verdict is closed, the case is settled, but the imagery on the tablets remains. The Anunnaki as shown standing beside winged discs, hovering in the air, holding objects that look like handbags, the same shape. Appears in Mesoamerica, appearing in cultures that never touched, unexplained. Then there is the Sumerian king list, recording the rulers of Mesopotamia, listing their reign lengths. Some ruled for tens of thousands of years. Numbers no human body could survive. The list says the flood swept over the land. Then after the flood, reign shortened. Scholars read this as symbolic, a numerical convention. But if we read it literally, the pre-flood rulers were not human, post-flood rulers were. This is the part academia will not engage with. Not because the evidence is overwhelming, but because the question is radioactive. Any tenured scholar treating the Anunnaki as history faces professional destruction, so the tablets sit in museums. In London, Berlin, and Baghdad, you are looking at a record. But you are not allowed to read it as one. Egypt, the Great Pyramid, built from roughly 2-3 million limestone and granite blocks. Some blocks weigh 80 tons, quarried, dressed, and lifted into place. Egyptologists say it is a tomb. Theorists look in a different direction. The king's chamber sits on massive granite beams. Granite is piezoelectric, meaning it generates voltage under mechanical stress. The chamber is not just resting on stone, but on material that generates electricity. Like a ground battery, engineers call it overkill. For structural support, theorists call it a machine. Nikola Tesla speculated the pyramid could focus electromagnetic energy. He believed shape was function, with exact angles. An antenna carved from rock, walk inside, and the architecture no longer feels ceremonial, it echoes, guides sound waves. Sound lingers in the chambers, stand in the grand gallery. The geometry resonates at low frequencies. The chambers are not sized for human comfort. They are sized for waveforms. Shafts pierce the structure. Evidence suggests a circuit. Not designed to house the dead, but a machine of stone, built by a civilization we credit with copper chisels and rope. Either they had engineering principles we do not credit them with, or they had something older, inherited knowledge. When archaeologists opened the pyramid, they found no mummy, proving the tomb was robbed. But why take the body and leave the sarcophagus? The granite sarcophagus sits empty in its chamber for 4,000 years. The Great Pyramid does not behave like a tomb, it behaves like infrastructure. Measurements taken inside push advanced human knowledge backward. Once you accept the timeline can be pushed back, you are forced to ask, how far back does it go? Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, on a windswept hilltop, dated to 9600 BCE. That number is worth holding. It predates Stonehenge. By 6,000 years, predates Giza. By 7,000 years, when the first stones were raised, the last mammoths were still alive. Pottery did not exist anywhere on Earth, yet someone built this. The site consists of massive T-shaped limestone pillars. Pillars standing 18 feet tall, weighing up to 20 tons, quarried, shaped, and transported before the wheel. Pillars carved with animals, giraffes, boars, cranes, snakes, vultures, predators and scavengers, creatures of death, and warning, staring from the stone with an intensity that does not feel decorative, arranged in structured stone circles. This is where it gets strange. Mainstream theory says farming came first. Humans learned to grow crops before building monuments. But Göbekli Tepe reverses that. The temple came first, the shared belief came first. Researchers now argue building Göbekli Tepe drove humans to invent agriculture. You cannot feed a massive workforce on wild gazelle. To raise these pillars, the builders had to domesticate the land. Religion may have built civilization, not the reverse. This is not a minor correction. It appends the entire origin story, the strangest detail. Around 8000 BCE, the builders returned. They deliberately buried Göbekli Tepe layer by layer until the pillars disappeared. Under an artificial hill, they did not destroy it. They protected it, sealed it, like sealing something. No longer safe to leave exposed. We do not know why. We do not know what they were sealing it against. It lay silent, preserved, waiting. When archaeologists excavated the first pillars in the 1990s, they dated them, and the discipline went quiet. If Göbekli Tepe is real, and the dates are right, everything we were told about our ancestors is wrong. The builders knew geometry, moved heavy stone, organized labor, before they were supposed to know how to grow wheat. Someone taught them, or someone older remembered, raising the question, what happened to the world before? Around 12,800 years ago, something hit Earth. The climate warming after the last ice age suddenly reversed. Temperatures plunged across the northern hemisphere. Megafauna went extinct across multiple continents. In a very narrow window, a black layer in the geological record. Above the black layer, the megafauna are gone. Below it, they are everywhere. The boundary is just centimeters of soot. Around the world, there are gouges up to 900 feet deep. Not carved by rivers, but by walls of water. Ripple marks on the earth, tall enough to hide a building. Whatever happened, it happened fast, to a world that already had people in it. The theory turns inward, our entire origin story. The dawn of civilization, when we learned to farm, it could be wrong. If the impact event happened, it wiped out cities, civilizations, knowledge. The survivors fell back to hunting and gathering. If Carlson and Hancock are right, agriculture is not an origin, it is a restart. We are not the descendants of the first civilization. We are the descendants of the second. The first ended in fire and flood. What we call history is just the small bright fragment after 12,000 years rebuilding. On top of a grave, we never knew. One final thought. The orbit that intersected Earth is not closed. The cycle that ended the last world is a cycle, and we do not know how much is left. The question is no longer what they knew. The question is, could it happen again? Click the video on screen now and subscribe.